wrap up, head coach Seb Hines said we're back, traveling to Louisville for a Friday game. What kind of matchup do you expect against Racing Louisville?
It's always a tough environment to go play. Bev's done a great job in the last couple of years, really installing an identity. They're physical, they're fast, they're direct, and we've got to face those challenges whilst also trying to play our own game. We want to build on. From the first 5 games, we've had a nice break, and just start to kick on now.
Cross.
Kind of talk about the first 5 games and playing all of that in a kind of short amount of time, 6-7 weeks or so, and then having a 2-week break. How tough is that, or how beneficial is that, just for the team, kind of having that stop and start?
Yeah, I think the break came at a good time for us. Like you said, it was quick turnarounds. We didn't feel like we got much training in. It was ultimately play game, recover, and then you're on to the next one. And I thought we dealt with it really well. A bit of travel in there as well, going to Chicago and Gotham. But to end that 5-game stretch with a win against Angel City, albeit the last kick of the game almost, gives us good momentum now. When that break, it feels a little bit different. When you're coming off a 3-point win. It allows us to get some of the knocks and niggles from some of the players, and obviously other players going away on international duty. You can't control that. Always great opportunity to represent your country, and we're thankful they're back and healthy and ready to go again.
For the players that were here, what was kind of the biggest sticking point for you in terms of training, and what was kind of the thing that you wanted this team to work on the most?
Yeah, I think the results are what they are. A defeat at home is never nice. But it was the first game of the season, so still trying to figure things out. We showed a lot of grit and determination, in the last game against Angel City to come back and get the win. I think between the two boxes, being hard to play against, hard to score against, but also been threatening the attack, and the opposite side has been great. I think everything in between. Can we possess the ball, get a few more passes? Make better decisions, in and around the box as well, rather than forcing things. And it's always challenging because we only just got our internationals back. But that's been the theme for the last, couple of weeks. If we can control the tempo of the game and create better opportunities to score.
How do you kind of balance the what you do in training versus what you do in games, and just that translation between the two? And how much do you kind of benefit just having this next stretch of games, kind of being able to work on it within the moments and playing against healthy competition?
Yeah, you got to control the moments. Momentum is so key. If you have good momentum, can you be ruthless and relentless and execute? I think there's always going to be a moment where you got to weather a storm and stop the opponent from getting good momentum. And so, how do you stop that? I think the players have bought into that. But yeah, we look at every team. Every team brings different principles, philosophies. Whether you're playing away from home or you're playing at home, there's so much quality within the league, and it's only getting better each year. So, with every team that you play against, there's always a different solution. There might be a team that likes a high press, mid block. There might be other teams that are content with having more of the ball. So how do we find other solutions to still get the same outcome, and that's winning? It's going to pose different challenges as each week and each game goes by, but everyone is locked in and everyone's ready to compete and go for that common goal, which is winning what's in front of you.
You mentioned the players coming back from international duty. A couple of them played 3 matches. How do you kind of balance their return back into the team and managing their minutes after having just played a number of games with their country?
Yeah, you have to take that into account, and obviously the traveller as well. Even not playing minutes and having to travel can take a load out. So yeah, I think you can control what you can control. You can't control what's happening in the game, but what you do with your environment, maybe it's an extra day off, maybe it's not as much load in training. Those little things can go a long way for peak performance when you go onto the field.
With there already having been a break, just a couple of games in the season, it's going to be another one coming up soon. Do you approach these as like seasonal chunks, like a first season, a second season? How do you kind of approach that with your team?
Yeah, we did. We had a bit of a reflection this morning, just on where we're at in terms of the league and how we're performing, and we've got some key personnel that can back that up with data as well. It's not just coming from a subjective point of view, which helps. And so you look at areas that we can continue to improve on. I think first 5 games, you don't want to be perfect. You don't want to be, peaking at a moment. You always want to continuously improve, and we found areas that we can improve on. We've had a good first 5 games, but we like winning, and we want to win every game that's in front of us, and finding ways to do that.
You mentioned the last game y'all played, you won, came down on the wire with everything that happened with it. How do you keep that momentum going during that 2-week break and going into this next section of the season?
Yeah, I think it's difficult when you've got such a break in between, other players going on international duty. If there was another game after that game, it would have been easier, but I think it does allow you to reset, take a step back, reflect on what we've done well in the first 5 games and push on now. Next game's up Friday away at Louisville, which is always a challenging environment for Orlando Pride. But we want to set a tone for this next stretch of games, and going there and getting a win will certainly do that.
How was training today, having everybody back?
Yeah, it was good. It's always nice to see players back. Respectively, what they've done for their countries is always important, but it's what they do here for Orlando Pride, and that's always our priority. We want them to be performing, to get more opportunities to represent their country, but you got to separate that from being away with international duty to now coming back to club football and getting up to speed with NWSL.
These games coming up, Louisville, Washington, the likes of North Carolina, obviously every team is good in their own right, and the goal is always to get those 3 points. But what do you want to see from your team going into these next games, arguably a very hard stretch of matches?
Yeah, we always talk about one step at a time, right? So looking ahead, Louisville's priority. I've spoken about it's a difficult place. It's a physical game all the time. So we got to stand up to that challenge. We need to embrace those moments where it might be going from back to front very quickly, first, second balls, and then once the ball's on the floor and we've got good possession, how do we build and create goal-scoring opportunities? We got to check that box, and then we look forward to Washington after that. But priority right now is Louisville away.
Thank you, Seb.
Cheers, guys.